How you doing out there? Welcome to the Elephant Room. This is our fourth episode.
Yeah.
And man, I'm ready to get deep into this topic. I want to thank those of you who've come into the room already, Dre and Kinte, to Carter and Taylor, who's listening in on the side, Sybil. So all of the people that are going to be coming into the room, we'll try to every now and then give some shout outs to those who came in. But this topic is kind of like an accumulation of all of the things that we've been talking about throughout the month. And we began with it's an identity series basically, and we tried to figure out who we were in terms of our geographic location and some of the historical references to where we've been as a people. We went into the different masks and respectability politics that we put on in order to navigate. So it's kind of like, who are the selves that we wear? Mm-hmm. And so now we're in the series of self-awareness and spirituality. It coincides with that idea of, now we're in the series of what we want to do right now. Oh, somebody else has joined us. Curtis. Okay. So what we want to do is start the conversation by basically asking those of you in the room who are either on the screen or in the sidelines. Mm-hmm. You wanted to start with something.
Well,
that's right. Okay, you go first.
You know what? Like a lot of people call this Elephant Room, but yes, my name is Elephant. Her name is Room. So my name is Mike Truth the Nomad, A.k.a. Boogie Mkab, but you guys can call me Boogie. And this beautiful lady next to me, what is your name?
My name is L.A Wade.
Okay.
Welcome to the Elephant Room.
But
Okay. So what you wanted to say? You said something about Tupac.
So actually, the one of my favorite artists is Tupac Shakur, and he has a very profound track called "Who Do You Believe In?" And that track for me is just basically like, it spoke so much volume to me as to who do I believe in, and then that led me to the next sequence as to why do I believe what I believe. And I think today, like, that's the essence of basically like this conversation, to try to basically make individuals understand why do you believe like what you believe, if it could get to that point. So I think without further ado, L.A should basically.
Okay, my question is, first of all, what does religion mean to you? I'm going to ask you, Dre. What
religion?
Does mean to you? And if you want to share a bit of your past, it might shed some light on possibly Boogie's question.
All right. So I'm a Christian, what people would label as a Christian. I was a pastor, full-time assistant pastor for 10 years. I didn't grow up in the church. I wound up becoming a Christian at 17. When I got saved, started to read the Bible a little bit more. Had a lot of questions. Wound up going to Bible college. And wound up landing a position as an assistant pastor running the youth and family ministries at the church. And I'm no longer operating as a full-time pastor. I am still an ordained minister, but I don't pastor anymore. I got divorced, and divorce in a lot of church denominations is seen as a bad thing. And with many denominations, if a pastor or somebody that serves in that role gets a divorce, they'll have to step down from the position. So I was asked to resign. And since then, I've been teaching, but still living out my faith. But I've been living it out a little bit differently. And to answer that question, what is religion to me? So I've been on sort of a different side. I've seen what people see as the leadership side of church and religion, and then just being who I am as a believer in God and Christ. Hey, hey, what's up, Dr. Vibe? So religion to me has become more of me serving God through serving people. Religion. So people have an issue with religion. Yeah. And I don't necessarily have an issue with religion anymore. I remember when I was active, preaching every week and stuff like that, I would always talk about how bad religion was and how people needed a relationship. Religion isn't a bad thing. How we view religion in Western civilization today is definitely a bad thing, because a lot of times we see religion as what God can do for me. Really, what religion truly is, if you read the scriptures, it really talks more about what you can do for others.
Right.
So,
Sure.
so when the Bible says that true and true undefiled religion is going to feed the hungry, to visit the sick and the afflicted, to take care of the widows. So religion is really not something that you do in church on Sundays when you're singing and listen to the pastor preach. Religion is something that you're living out in service to other people. And so when I see religion, that's how I see it now. So so if that makes sense. So I don't see religion as what I do ritualistically to grow in my faith. I see religion as what I'm doing outward to be a help and a blessing to other people.
So you've made a clear distinction between religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
It seems. And it seems like spirituality is filled with service, and it comes from a different place than what you were doing as a pastor, which would be more ritualistic.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Very true. Yep.
Yeah. What about you, Kinte? What is what does religion mean to you, or is it more of a spirituality for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe there's a difference between spirituality and religion. I grew up in the church. My grandfather was a pastor. I was one of those kids who went to church like 3 or 4 times a week in the choir and all of that kind of stuff. And my mother is very devout. My father wasn't. I mean, he was. He had been baptized as a kid, but he wasn't really like a religious guy. Not he wasn't an atheist, but he just wasn't about all that. And so I had different polarizing views of religion coming up. When I became a teenager, I really moved away from the church. And not that I didn't believe, it was just that I didn't see the value into going to church every Sunday, right? So, and it's pretty much been the same way as an adult. Except for, if there's like a major event or something like that, I do support my family and all that kind of good stuff. My feeling about religion, especially as it is when it comes to Black people, is that religion in a lot of ways have been great for us as far as, in like the civil rights movement. It was a lot of the Black church was very instrumental in helping with all of that and whatnot, and even going back to slavery. But also religion has also been used to colonize us and to mentally keep us in bondage as well. So it's like this thing where on one hand you can point to a lot of positives that it's done for our people, and then and that iconic imagery of the white Jesus has been used to oppress us as well. So especially as a Black male, it's a weird thing to grapple with, religion and the way that it is, especially in the United States. So
I just want to follow you down that rabbit hole of as a Black man. And then you qualified it as a Black man, what?
As a Black male, the idea of the iconic imagery of the white Jesus that's in most Black churches,
right?
You see this image, and it's been used to keep us in a mental bondage. So seeing that imagery and really trying to grapple with the positives and the negatives that it has effect on our community is something that I think that a lot of us go through, especially those who are woke. So
I feel like the elephant in the room with what you're saying is, can we still believe in Jesus after we recognize that he was utilized as a reason to separate us? Can we still recognize the value of what Christ taught without putting a racial, because of the way he was depicted and what it was used for to break us down as people? Is there still value in Christ for Black people?
I believe so. But you know, it just, I guess it comes to the way that you view your faith and the way that you practice it. I think it's possible, but it's so hard because the way that it's set up is not necessarily, I think, beneficial in that way to do that. So it's, you know, it's a strange thing, and I'm glad that Dre is here because, you know, being, you know, someone who, you know, a minister and whatnot, it'd be really good to hear his thoughts on that. And I'm sure that he's thought about what I'm talking about, you know, many times. So it'd be good to get some good insight from him from that.
Just before that happens, I just want to, I'm going to unlock the room. So if somebody wants to take another seat, they can come in and grab that spot. Also, Fax is dying to jump in. Fax is in the studio with us. So he's going to speak to that question because he wants to say something to what Kinte was just sharing.
The voice of God.
He's going to kind of come from this area. You'll hear his voice, but he usually drops knowledge, so it's all good. Go ahead, Fax.
So I just want to say something that you, as African people, we recognize that we were given an economic, social structure that was meant to keep us in a state of oppression and submission. And yet we have this idea that we were given a religion that was meant to uplift us while all this was happening. To me, this is the epitome of nonsense. And I'm sorry to come off so strong, but I have very strong opinions on this because, as one of you just mentioned a little while ago, you know, there's this, you know, things sit in our subconscious, right? This visual, Jesus has become sort of a visual avatar of a white male to whom I am to give my worship and devotion. And in the end, my hope is to go to heaven, where this white male is going to, in some way, deliver me from the pain and suffering of the white males that happen to be on this planet. This, to me, is the beginning of a mental fiction that we inflict on children in Sunday school, which leads to a complete disassociative conundrum for any grown adult. There's no way you can rectify that you can rationalize this and make this make sense. But we do this, and you know, it's become the norm. So whatever, it is what it is at this point.
Well, like, I want to chime in, guys.
You have something to say, Boogie?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
If you guys know, the bigger elephant that's going on here is the fact that, so it's always Christianity that, like, we're basically tackling, and for us as people of color, there's so many different, like, belief systems out there that you got people that actually practice what we call Ifa or voodoo or a drill when you're from Ghana and everything, and constantly I always wonder, why is the Christianity that comes to the top of the stove or the burner whenever we talk about our belief systems and stuff like that.
Well, first of all, you just mentioned voodoo. How many people kind of like swallowed hard because of what that is supposed to be associated with? This is a part of colonizing our minds around the things that were a part of how our culture was in Africa. But the demonization of that, how does that land in your body? And if you're not sure how that lands for you, then it might be pointing to the direction that we have a lot more work to do in terms of understanding who we are or where we came from. But I don't want to take away from what you were saying.
No, but my whole point is that conversation is always geared towards Jesus, and then either the color of Jesus or what it is that Jesus represents.
And it goes beyond.
Closer.
It goes beyond just Jesus. I mean, it's the whole. It's the acceptance of those 66 books, the way that they're laid out, and the acceptance of that narrative and that story, right? And so what we have a tendency, like for instance, the Black Hebrew Israelites, those folks that, you see them on the street corner making a whole bunch of noise and saying a bunch of nonsense.
You have to talk louder.
Like, can y'all
hear him? Yeah. No, I hear him good.
All right. Good. So what I was saying is, we are trying to glom onto a story, a narrative that has very little to do with us. As a Black man, who has come here by means of my ancestors' slavery. I am a West African. specifically Ghanaian. I know this, right? So instead of trying to associate with a Jewish story, which is really what the Bible is, okay? A European, by the time they get into the New Testament and they're, the fact they're in the Roman Empire and so on and so forth, right? But rather than trying to glom onto their story, I find it much more attractive personally to be engaged in trying to understand sort of the philosophy and the background of my story. Under no circumstance do I don't want to come off being too harsh. Even the Luciferian, I knew a person who was a Luciferian. He said some things to me that were profound, that sounded almost Buddhist. So my point being is that in every religion and in every doctrine, there's some wisdom, right? So that there's some wisdom in Christianity, or that Jesus said certain things that were ascribed to him that made sense. That's all good. But should I take that on now as a part of my core identity? For me personally, I say no, because it's in too much conflict. The white European Jesus is in too much conflict with me as a black man, right?
May I interject to that?
Please do.
Yeah.
So I would like to just recommend, if people can, I know it's going to be difficult, to stop looking at let's stop looking at the message that Jesus had through Western optics. Because if you're looking at Jesus and you say that you can't really accept that because of because remember the colonialism started almost a millennial after the events that was recorded about Jesus. So Jesus itself is against everything that the colonialists did by uprooting Africans out of Africa, bringing them here. That was all manipulation. And the thing is, we look at what, and the thing is, we have to start somewhere.
Okay,
And,
well, what if there's a disagreement with that fact? If we start from there, if there's a disagreement with the fact that
the Jewish people, let's look at the Bible as it is, right? The establishment of the descendants of Jacob in Palestine was a colonialist adventure to begin with, right? Started by whom? Moses, Joshua, right? The very heart and the justification of slavery within the Bible comes from that colonialist exercise. And so even today, the recolonization of Palestine by Jewish people the justification for it is right there in the Bible, right? Slavery, the justification for it is right there in the Bible. Slaves, love your masters, right? Obey your masters. So all of that was already was formative to the scripture. I'm not even just talking about Jesus. I'm talking about the whole entire scripture, the whole entire book. As I said, my issues with the whole 66 books. So it's formative to the whole notion. And so how do you divorce that? I can now cherry pick, if I choose, a couple of nice phrases from the book of John here and the book of Matthew there, and say, okay, well, and I can make a big thing of it. But that requires what? Cognitive dissonance, because I have to now divorce that from the fact that slavery, pedophilia, rape, murder, all of those things are advocated by, depending on how you look at it, Jesus earlier on in the book when he was the father. But then, oh, wait a second, he's not the father because he's the son. Oh, wait a second. No, I'm not going through that nonsense. So again, I don't mean to come off too harsh, but I just think that we have to be, again, to avoid that cognitive dissonance and to have a very real moment with ourselves about, was this thing given to us to uplift us, or was it given to us as a means of suppressing us, intimidation, and keeping us down? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, you can make positive out of it. I'm not saying that you can't, because there's a lot of phenomenal people that I know in my own family, mother being one of them, Christians, great, beautiful people. I'm not making it about that. I'm not making a judgment on any individual, but I'm just making a judgment on the system and what was its initial intentions. And
one of my big issues with religion is it doesn't have you think about things critically. It makes you go off of faith, so you don't look at things critically. So a lot of times when you even bring up certain things that don't make sense to Christians, they put their fingers in their ears and go la 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 la. They don't even want to have a discussion about it, because the mere discussion of it is blasphemy. So I think that is something that for those who who are trying to make sense of everything, it's a turnoff because it's like, okay, I have some real questions about, if we're using Christianity in this instance about it. If people who think critically are like, this doesn't make sense to me. This, you don't really have those conversations a lot of times. It is.
Yeah.
I was interrupted before, but I just wanted to clarify something, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
When I was referring to starting off from where we were with the Western colonialization and how they twisted that faith, and how in Europe and in America we view Christianity from a Western lens. But when you go into other places, other countries, like Northern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, they see it much differently than how we see it. So it's almost hard not to look at Christianity from the Western perspective, because it's been pushed so hard and we've been pulled down because of it. But if we if we start there and begin to unpack, we see that Jesus. And again, I know what he was saying about the Israel and the Jewish people have some definite points to. And if I could unpack that also, that's okay. I'm not going to be too long, because I know this isn't just about Christianity; it's about all. But Jesus himself was raised in the Arabian Peninsula. He has nothing to do with Europe. He's not white. But when Christianity began to spread into Europe, and then it became popular in Rome with Constantine, then it became more of a European type of religion, and it wasn't always that way. In fact, Christians in the very beginning, for the first 230 years, were outlawed and killed for their faith. Mm-hmm. So how we see Christianity today as being the white man prosperous religion, it wasn't always that way. If I was a Christian back, in the early century of Christianity, I would have been outlawed. I would have been chased. I would have been probably killed. All right. And I wanted to ask questions about the rape thing. I don't ever remember the Bible validating rape.
Numbers 28.
Numbers 28. I'll research that.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure on that. I may have to. It is when I believe it's the Amorites. God commands Moses to attack the Amorites and kill all the men, take all the women who have not been with anybody, all the virgins essentially, including children, and essentially divide them amongst the soldiers.
That's so interesting. But to Dre's point,
you want to acknowledge the lovely lady in the room?
Welcome to the room, Anika.
Hi. It's really funny. You said Numbers 28, and I whipped out my Bible. Like, all right, let me dust this thing.
You ain't lying. I'm on it.
Oh, okay.
I'll find you. As I said, I'll find you the right scripture.
See, like the good thing here that Taylor says that he didn't mention the context. So like and that's one thing about the Bible too. So basically, when you're reading something, you got to know the context as to what is being written.
I'll find it.
Now,
Go ahead.
So we look at the Bible as like a religious document. The Bible actually was written by people as a historical document. It's not just religious. Yes, there's some laws there, and the Constitution in the United States has laws. Every country have a set of laws. When Israel was started, it was started to be a theocratic type of government system where God was in essence was in charge. Therefore, the Ten Commandments and the Book of the Law came out because God was to rule the people. So we look at the Bible and we think automatically the Bible is a list of rules. It's religious commands that we need to live by. But we forget the fact that there's also historical historical events that happened in the past. And we tend to forget that. Like the Bible has a lot of history as well in it. But I'm looking for that scripture.
Bax just wanted to clarify and say it was in Numbers 31. That he's
Numbers 31, where Moses attacks the Midianites as an act of revenge.
Because one other angle that I like to explore, and it kind of goes along with what Dre is saying for me. Like, why is it that the villainization of Christianity is so prevalent in society? For me, from being from an African background, being born in Ghana, and as I was saying earlier in the early conversation, so my grandfather, he practiced what people call voodoo, like really hard voodoo. And my grandmother, she was like a very devout Christian. This from my mom's side. And for me, in growing up, so when my grandfather died, and then my grandmother died, there was a lot of death that was like occurring in my family, I think around 95, 96. And everybody was attributing that to this shrine being in my mom's home and everything. And for me, they basically like understanding that, I was aware, okay, there's I believe in spirituality. So I was aware there's two forces here at play. There's one that's obviously for life and one that's obviously going for death. So for me, when I, for some reason, the connection for me, when I look a bit further, I'm like, okay, so the idea of Jesus Christ is supposed to, for me, represent like something that is liberational, so like someone who came to die for my sins and whatnot. So that story, like for me, I jive with that. Somebody basically coming to like, help me out. Now, the representation of Jesus Christ being a white face or like whatever color it is, that for me is an aspect that was put into a man's opinion to basically further like cause a divide within my thinking. Because when I look at other basically like beliefs, like in Islam, like nowhere you're going to find a representation of Muhammad, like no image of Muhammad, and there's a reason for that. Like the reason is that it doesn't create this confusion as to, oh, because Muhammad does not look like me or he looks like this person, I'm not going to follow the teachings. Because when you follow the teachings, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Now there's a story. So the Bible, yes, like as you're saying, it's a historic document. Now within it, there's a story of an individual who's basically playing a role in there. So for me, when you look at Jesus in the story of the Bible, yes, there's going to be a lot of things where, I mean, you could see rape or whatever it is that they say. It's telling about the facts, events that occurred during that time. And when I follow Jesus, I look at Jesus and like the example that he set. So it's got to really be cautious.
Okay, I just want to address the whole rape situation.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what facts is talking about is found in Numbers 31, 17 to 18. And basically I don't know the context, so I can't give you the full context, but it does say, now kill all the boys and kill every woman who slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. So I guess you may want to clarify how you understood that, what the context and what you understand about that.
So here's the thing with religion, right? So events happen, and what we do is we ascribe the author of it as divine or as human. That's the choice we have. So we have a choice. An event happened. At some point, the people who consider themselves Israelites, members of these 12 tribes, went into this area, and there was a war. So so that's a historical fact, okay? We'll assume that that's the case. So we have two things that we can believe. Either A, God commanded for these people to go and do that, or they chose to do it because they wanted to do a land grab. Okay?
But we have to, in context also, it was a matter of revenge or vengeance. So something had happened prior to that.
Right. Okay. Right.
So they didn't, from what it looks like, they didn't just go in to take it. It looks like there was an incident before where the Midianites attacked them, and they went to go take vengeance, or retaliate.
Right. So, but essentially, the act of it was sort of it was retaliatory. However, the initial move was theirs because they were the ones who invaded the land to begin with, right? So whether it would be the Amorites, the Jebusites, the Midianites in this instance, and the list goes on and on of all the different tribes that lived in that area, which we now call Palestine, A.k.a. Israel. Those people were all domesticated in that area long before what we now consider Jewish people invaded that land. Okay, so that's just a part of the historical record. Hence why they walked around in a circle for 40 years after they left Sinai, aka Egypt. Right. So
I think.
Wait.
So prior, so back further on into Exodus, even and actually toward the end of Genesis, they lived there first, and after the famine, they went to Egypt, and that's where many of the Jews went and they lived. And when they increased in numbers, the Egyptians made them slaves.
So
After
where
which,
did black people?
well, give me 1 second. So after this, actually, we can connect that because in essence, they weren't advocating slavery either. They were looking to liberate themselves from the very bondage of the Egyptians. So after they left Egypt, they were looking to go back to where they were initially. But when they got there, they saw that there were people there. Now, I agree. I don't agree with everything that's in the Bible. I don't understand why they couldn't just go there and seek to assimilate with one another and live peaceably with one another. That I don't understand. I don't, and I don't have an answer to that. But just in what you were saying, just responding to what you were saying, Facts. Initially, the 12 was there first, and then they went to Egypt, and then after they became slaves in Egypt, they wanted to return back to where they came from, and when they got there, people were already there.
But now Joseph was the first. I don't want to make this a whole Bible study here, but Joseph was the first. Okay. So you have, it's been a little while, so I'm a bit rusty on my Bible, but I can get up to speed. But Joseph is the one who ends up going into Egypt and calling for his family. So we're talking about one family in specific that now goes. So from that area, so one family who goes into Egypt and eventually they populate the area. And let's go even further back to the beginning of this. Essentially, where is Jacob from, or Israel, the original, is from Ur of the Chaldees, which is in Babylon. These are essentially Babylonian people. They're actually Iraqis. So they shouldn't even be there. They migrated and they use they come through Israel, yes, migrate into Egypt, and during their sojourn there, find themselves in a state of bondage, allegedly. There's no historical record of this that we can find. The Egyptians were very meticulous about record keeping. There is literally no record of this. But anyways, we won't get into that. Bottom line is, at some point, these people feel that it is their right, their divine right, to return back to this land, which we again now call Israel. The young lady asked a very, very pertinent and relevant question, which is this: how does any of this relate to me as a West African? It doesn't. But I can continue on with the story, and I can focus on somebody else's narrative and somebody else's story if I want, right? As much as we could focus on the story of Buddha, which is also a very compelling and interesting story, right? Or name any other religion you'd like to. But again, if the main point is, how does any of this relate to us? Yes, there are many moral lessons. I've already said that within the Bible. But if we are to believe that Jesus is either A, God, or B, speaks for God, then this murder that happens in Numbers 31 was authorized and ordained by God, A.k.a. Jesus, at some point. So if there's a cognitive dissonance between who this individual is and how he felt between this span of 2,500 years, there's a moral inconsistency, because now we would find it reprehensible if somebody said to us, yeah, go kill a bunch of those boys and let's go rape some of them girls. No one would be co-signing that, much less worshiping that. But this is what people are expecting me to believe. I choose not to. That's all. I
don't know if that's what the religion is calling for you to do.
but it did call for it.
The major part that you're missing is that this at the end it was still retaliating. They were taking vengeance, and that's a big part that we're missing here.
But 2,500, and that's fine. But then 2,500 years later, you say turn the other cheek. So we got to know how we're doing
now.
Okay, wait. So Anika, what did you want to say?
I was gonna say that what I know of God is that He isn't supposed to always be like dandelions and lollipops. You know, there was destruction that He had to do, like in the Bible and stuff like that. So I guess like what the pastors, what you're saying, Jay, makes sense, because it was vengeance, and like, you know, in the Bible it says, you know, God seeks vengeance, but we're not supposed to.
But you know what though, I do understand what Facts are saying. A lot of times we go into the Bible, we read it, or any religious document that we think is religious, we read it and we don't ask pertinent questions. We don't ask, well, why did this happen? What's going on? And I think that's important. But that's a good point, Anika.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, man.
Just from a moral standpoint, should we turn the other cheek or should we take vengeance?
Vengeance.
They didn't even stutter. Vengeance.
All right, this question.
Because you know what actually really upsets me now that we're having this discussion? The fact that, yeah, like in elementary school and in school, you know, you hear about voodoo and like it's the only thing I knew about African spirituality, and everyone's like, you know, I guess like, you know, it's obviously demonized and looked at as like crazy. And so it came to a point where I was just like, so are my ancestors all evil? You know what I mean? Like that was kind of the narrative that was being told to me, that my ancestors are evil. And if I were to embrace them in any way, I would be attaching myself to like all this negativity.
So
I literally just uploaded a video to my YouTube channel, my son, about parents not telling their kids to hit back, right? Because in essence, that's vengeance, right? The problem with that, the hitting back initially, is when we teach people that it's okay to hit back, we don't assess properly what happened in the first place. Third grade teacher, right? I've broken up so many fights between two kids, right? Where they would be in, like, for instance, they would be in line walking, right? And somebody would accidentally bump into another student. And that student will push him back. And then when I asked them why it was an accident, they would tell me, my mom said that I need to hit them back if they hit me. But I said, well, it was a mistake. Like, you have to assess the situation. Now, like me personally, facts, I don't ascribe to vengeance, nor do I ascribe to turn the other cheek. I ascribe to, I'm about to guard myself, assess the situation, and if I have to, I'm going to defend me, my family, my property, and everything that I love. But the motive behind vengeance is very self-fulfilling. So then I would ask, what are you looking at? What are you avenging? Like, what is it that you're trying to avenge when you're looking to have revenge? You know, am I saying turn the other cheek? Absolutely not. But, you know, I would say.
But it teaches. And I think that's the part that we're trying to get at is, as Black people who have come from enslavement, when we get the narrative to turn the other cheek, however many times, in order to be seen with favor in the eyes of our Creator, what does that narrative do to Black people in terms of being able to move forward? How can we even think about retaliation or vengeance in relation to understanding ourselves as being understanding or sympathetic to the person who oppressed us?
Can I ask a question? Is it a useful device that if I had a group of people who by all rights might be a little bit, let's say, pissed off, right? Would it be useful for me to create a sense of docility in them so that they just remained calm, or they felt like their reward was in the hereafter, so they didn't take up arms against me right now? Can I say something? If it's just me, I would probably do that. I'd probably say, you know what, submission and turning the other cheek is probably the highest form of morality. And it's desirable to behave that way. In fact, if I was a Roman emperor who was constructing the Bible, what I would do is I'd make sure that a lot of those verses ended up in there. That's what I would do. Right?
Yeah. Facts is about the elephant in the room. Yeah, most definitely.
Can I take a moment? We're also broadcasting on Periscope as well, and I wanted to give a shout out.
Big with Periscope.
I see West Hill is in there, as well as CD Sicarlo. Hopefully I said the name right. Anybody else that's there, feel free to get your questions in, and I will relay them to the group.
Shannon.
Thank you. Hey, Shannon.
Yes, and then if you guys want to give a quick shout out to the people in
the people in the room, you can read them through.
So shout out Carter, Tony Davis, Taylor, Luke, Euless, Rad, Frazier, Chocolate Fruit, Shannon.
Love it. Chocolate fruit.
Yeah,
Chocolate
welcome to
fruit.
the conversation. And so like one thing that I want to do in the realm of like spiritual understanding of self, because like for me now, like it goes from religion to spirituality, because religion, when you look at the base of that word, in Latin is religar, which is basically like bondage. Basically, it's a bondage. It's a word that describes bonding yourself to something, to a set of rules, a set of laws, and everything. So when you look at it like slavery and enslavement, religion would be like a tool that's used and principles that are used to enslave people. Now, for me, as an individual, as I'm growing, yes, dictionary, please. So as I'm growing up, one thing that I'm becoming more and more aware of is my spiritual connection to my Creator, and like the concepts of like the greater energy all around me and how it manifests. And I'm seeing these same principles basically being touched on Christianity, Islam, even people who practice basically what is known as Ifa or Voodoo and everything. The whole purpose is to connect to the higher source. And I think that in focusing on which religion is right or which ideology is right, that's what's keeping us basically in a mindset as to, first of all, like define exactly the division aspect of it. So it's like, okay.
I think she was just affirming you.
So it's like, yes.
Me?
Yeah, I thought you were saying something up there.
I was agreeing.
Yes.
So it's like, in finding that you have to basically look beyond like all these different like set of beliefs. Like you as an individual on your journey is like, what are you uncovering? What are you discovering about yourself? Because if I'm trained to think that it's my ancestors, so my grandfather, him acquiring that shrine, that is basically like what was causing like all these deaths in my family, then okay, cool. I can basically I could believe that voodoo is like something that's bad and whatnot, but there's like there's a specific role to it. I mean, there's something there where it's like him as an individual, he felt that in order for him to belong or prosper, he needed to submit to like natural forces, which is basically these shrines that he would do these offerings to, and hey, he would get a lot more oranges or whatnot for his farm. But it's like in doing that, if it is true that people in my family were dying because of that, then okay, for me, then I'm like, okay, I can't follow that path. Like, I think the actual issue here, it becomes between religion and spirituality and like what that represents for you as the individual.
But not only what it represents for you as an individual, what does it represent for you as a Black individual who is walking through oppression day to day? Do we have the privilege of understanding ourselves outside of just religion? And how do we operate our spirituality within the idea that we are being oppressed and that there's a system in place for us to, you know, if we take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how do we get to self-actualization when our basic needs are always impacted by the things that we are choosing to believe or not believe in? I know that you're about to say something. Go ahead.
Well, that's why I was saying, like, that's why we have to remove that Western lens from our optics when we look at spirituality. And the thing is, like in America, everything is black and white. No way you cut it. Everything from religion to communities to politics, everything is black and white. But spirituality,
and why is that?
Because of the
not
dominance.
Only why is it, but what do we do in relation to our self-actualization as a result of it, in spite of it?
Yeah.
It wasn't rhetorical, but
I
guess you understand what I'm saying.
The thing is, once you do that, then you'll be able to see things a little bit more clearly. And it's hard to. It's very hard to. Years and years and years of oppression. Today, us not knowing our true identity and where we come from, many of us. I just recently took a DNA test. I'm hoping to get it back soon. It can tell me the region that I live in Africa, but my roots was cut. Like I was cut. I don't know where in Africa my family is from. So there's a lot of
play into what you're experiencing now as a person living in Brooklyn. If you know that, what are you going to change about yourself that you wouldn't change anyway because you're just evolving as a spiritual being?
What wouldn't I change?
Yeah, would you or would you not feel the need to? Because I mean, you got to however old you are right now, not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're at this stage in your life where you continue to evolve as a human being, spiritually. And so now having that piece of information of knowing where in Africa you come from, how is that going to inform you differently about how you experience the rest of your life, I guess?
It wouldn't inform me or motivate me to do anything differently right now. The knowledge itself would be pleasing for me. So it wouldn't like change anything right now or the direction that I'm going in.
It would
more just knowing
for you.
would help me out.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge Tony, just saying hi. Fax is going to say something.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, just give us a second while Fax is about to say something, and then we'll get back to what you were going to say.
I was just going to interject that humans have a desire for belonging and significance, and knowing your story gives you a place, right? A great issue with Africans in the diaspora is the lack of connection to a physical place. I mean, if you think about it, let's go back to the whole context of the Bible, or even to the same extent with Islam. It's all about a very terrestrial experience,
yes,
right? That Israel is a physical place, right? Everything in there is about geography, really, right? Same thing with Islam. Like a lot of the events, a lot of the story, the narrative is very connected to the land. We're a people displaced from our land, and so therefore always in a journey trying to find a sense of connection. And as I said earlier on, when I mentioned the whole thing with the Black Hebrew Israelites, they have glommed onto a story, somebody else's story, that has a lot of similarities with us in terms of the 400 years and all the rest of this kind of thing. So, and the whole idea of slavery and the people that were oppressed, and they have sort of bent history in order to make it work for them. My simple point before I'll say this one last thing. My simple point being is that it's disingenuous. Although it may be fulfilling on some level, it's also disingenuous to find out a story that's not yours and make it yours.
Okay.
Focus on your story.
I just want to pause. Tony, I'm going to ask you if you could just step out of the room for a second. And
okay.
Damon, only if you're able to come in and address something that Fax just said in regards to Israelites gleaming onto somebody else's story and that it's not their story. If you don't feel comfortable, you can just type in the comments and I can read them out. Oh, okay. Damon, if you could grab that spot, if you feel comfortable, praise God.
Welcome.
How's everybody doing?
Welcome, Damon. Thank you for logging in. And I just, I don't know if everyone knows who the hell that is, but that's a big deal right there. That's a CFL Hall of Famer.
NFL, CFL Hall of Famer
quarterback. Arm extraordinaire.
How's everybody doing?
We're good. We're doing well. As soon as he said that, I was like, Damon is going to be, his head is going to explode right now. And so I just wanted you to address something that Fax said that it struck me as interesting when he said that the Israelites were gleaming onto somebody else's story and that it's not really about them.
Well, the most difficult thing is we get caught up in religion. And when we talk about the Bible has its own doctrine as itself. Religion, Christianity, Islam, and the different religions that are out there, they have their own doctrine. And the fact that when you talk about the children of Israel, it's not a religion, it's a lifestyle. It's a physical people. And, I understood what Tony, not Tony, was it Tony? Tony was saying. Yes, I understand what he was saying. But when you think of the Word of God and the laws and the people that he was dealing with, even when you think of, because it's so often that people say, it doesn't matter, who the children of Israel are. But it really does matter, because on this earth today that doesn't know their history. And even in schools, it doesn't teach beyond slavery. Like, who were we before slavery? And so a lot of the questions that we're dealing with to a greater understanding and knowledge has a lot to do with understanding who we are as a people.
Right.
And even if you look at it on a historical basis were many people of color, melanin skin, who've been placed in all these different lands and been colonized by all these different European countries, then you have to question, it fits with the prophecies in Scripture to the T. The people they're talking about in Scripture are melanated people. So for me, it really comes down to, once I started to really search beyond who I am and started to figure out who I am, truth started to come to light for me. And in the same time as, you know, I'm from America. They call us blacks. Well, blacks is not a landmass or nationality. Mm-hmm. And so I had to really research, like, who am I beyond the color black?
Right.
Or who are you beyond the profile of Jamaica, Trinidadian, all the different nations that were these names were given to us? If we go beyond that, and actually if we go, you know, according to Scripture, which it talks about the law being the truth, the Word of God being the truth, and then you start to come with a different light, different understanding, and a sense of who you are.
Yeah.
And truth to come, and that's what's happened. You know, we as in this world, we start to believe the lie, and the truth is false. Because when you start selling truth, people get upset when you start giving truth.
Right. I just want to.
And so that's why the nation, this nation, Israelite nation, is growing, because it talks about in Isaiah that the Spirit of God will start to come on His people. That's why there's a growth there, because they're being obedient to Scripture, and we're starting to come to our fullness of who we are. And when we start coming back to the laws, it's changed your whole.
Okay, I just want to mention. Damon. Okay, Damon, I just want to highlight what Ulysses had to say in the comments. Ulysses. He is saying, people keep making comments and I can't get it. Greetings, everyone. My question is, how do we use the positive messages from the Bible or any other religious writings and don't, oh man, it went away again. And don't get caught up into the divisiveness purposes of religion, specifically for our Black people. This is actually something that the Elephant Room TV posted about when we were asking the question. We have, you know, the Nation of Islam, we have the Hebrew Israelites, we have the Black Panthers, we have Christians, we have Kemetic spirituality. We have all of these different things. And how do the question becomes, what would it do to get rid of these divisions amongst us so that we can work together? And I don't know if that's something that anybody in the room wants to even seek to address. And I know, Tony, you had something you wanted to say about slavery from before.
Yeah, basically all I was wanting to say, and I'm just using this from a biblical perspective. I have had some biblical Bible college and a lot of personal studies. The term slavery in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, is based upon Hebrew law. And Hebrew law pretty much, and I've said this in the comments a few times, Hebrew law basically is based upon servitude, and meaning that a person chooses to be a service to someone else. It's an accepted choice by the person. Now, somehow in history, I don't know how exactly, the term slavery has become a term of ownership. I own you, or you do a service for me because I own you. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Is in the Bible, that's basically what it was. It was based upon servitude. Somebody chose under a contract to say, "Okay, I'll be your slave for such and such amount of time to do whatever."
I'm still just saying, Tony. I just want to chime in real quick. And to Dre's point, American slavery was not that. It was not a choice to basically go into.
Nor Roman slavery.
Like nor Roman slavery. It was not.
No, absolutely wasn't.
No.
So what is that?
Sorry, we couldn't hear you, Damon.
So I was saying that
well,
what's the
Hebrew law is
definition of
based
that
upon
slavery?
servitude. So it's basically a
Hebrew law.
choice by somebody saying, okay, I will gladly or under circumstances serve you for a certain amount of time or a period of time or the rest of my life. It depended on the circumstances or whatever was going, just to say, okay, I'll be your servant and I'll gladly do so.
Okay, wait. Bax just wants to say something. Hold on, go ahead.
Hagar was a slave of my Bible fans. Give me who's Jacob? Hagar, Abraham, right?
Abraham.
That was the notion that was a consensual relationship is debatable, but that's just one example of a female slave at that time, right? But the idea slaves, as throughout all of history, are byproduct of. They come by means of debt or warfare. The idea of an individual willfully just sauntering up to a group of individuals and saying, "Hey, I wouldn't mind working for y'all for free." I don't know how historically accurate that is. Just putting that out there. Like, if it's not through debt, and in fact, that's when we talk about jubilees in the Bible. Yeah, there's many references to letting our slaves, in the context of the Hebrews who had slaves. Letting them free or letting their debts expire on the year of Jubilee, right? So that connects the whole idea of debt or warfare as being the impetus for them arriving into slavery. It wasn't just a choice. It's never been a historical choice. Furthermore, you also, bear with me, I want to say one other thing. You also have to consider the context. You're looking, the Israelites are Israelites through many different societies: Egyptian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Greek, Roman. And so the context of slavery changes in each one of those situations. So you can't just say, well, in the Bible times. People also have this tendency of saying in Bible times. Bible times is 4,500 years. We got to keep things in their proper context.
Damon, what were you going to say?
Well, I was saying that according to Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 68, it talks about the children of Israel not keeping the laws and what will happen to them. And so, we have different.
Your phone's breaking up. Your connection's breaking up.
But the slavery that the children of Israel went through, it was God's doing. And so, what kind would that be in slavery being a choice or the Most High God putting the children into slavery due to the fact of their disobedience and not keeping the laws? And who would fit those people today? Because you have to understand the Bible, which I believe in, it talks about the 18 nations. So the descendants of the children of Israel are still on this earth today.
There actually were 12 and a half. Yeah, there were 12 and a half.
12 tribes.
Yeah.
Who are those 12 tribes? That's the biggest question.
Well,
a lot of it was
based upon what's the word I'm looking for? Cleanliness, how to keep yourself clean, all that kind of stuff. So there was some biblical basis upon that about making sure that somebody was clean, healthy, how people could interact with each other. There was a little bit of basis upon that, but still, it's been warped and skewed very badly through the years.
Okay, what were you going to say?
Well, it's been warped and skewed so much to the fact where we are today as a nation, as a society, and even a world. Even religion in general is kind of warped and skewed because, it's like, well, what's the one religion we need to deal with? And that kind of stuff. It's really hard to deal with it. But when you come to think of, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, a lot of people agree with this, all religions are pretty much all the same anyway. That's what I think. They're just using different terms and facts and terminologies and different things.
I think what we're talking
but yeah, I mean,
Tony, I think there's a difference between religion and spirituality, and maybe possibly what the gist of it is supposed to help you get to. So in that sense, maybe all religions is supposed to get you to a state of consciousness that is specific to that, how that religion creates a way. For Christians, it's Jesus, you know, and there's different ways for different religions. And consciousness is very different than what we're talking about in the sense that Black people are having an experience, a human experience in this world that is impacting their ability to get to their state of consciousness, because it's impeding upon their ability to connect with themselves, because we are geographically scattered and not sure what to trust in. We are taken, religion that we've believed in our whole lives have been taken and perverted and retold to us in a different way. Other people have claimed possibly what is our religion and have ascribed it to themselves, and have even adopted a landmass that may not be theirs. So there's many different aspects, and this talk is specifically about how Black identity is impacted by our spiritual walks, and how those different spiritual walks keep us separated and even further from getting to where we need to be in terms of our consciousness. Because if Balak is supposed to be who we are, then how does that speak to the Israelite, the Christian, the Muslim, the Buddhist, all of the different Black people that are jumping on to whatever they think aligns for the atheism, for whatever belief is good for them?
In which I already said, Black is not a nationality or anything.
But all of
the nationality also has a landmass. So we can't.
Well, Malcolm told us that.
No, I'm not.
Malcolm
Black.
was trying to go in front of the United Nations to ensure that case was pleaded on in international court. Found himself with a bullet, several bullets riddling his body mere months later. Right. So yeah, you're not Black. You're an African. Wake up. I'm not saying that to you specifically, but to just all of us in general. You know, wear that title with pride. You know what I mean? A European is a European. He wears that title with pride and should. An Asian is an Asian. Wears that title with pride and should. And yes, we've been divorced from our land, but no.
Break up.
Can you not hear Fax talking?
Can you not hear me?
Yes, I hear him. I hear him.
Yeah.
My point is this: is that, you know, to what L.A. just said. Here's the thing.
But I must say it is a very interesting topic, and it's you can always learn whatever topic that you go through and see, how does it impact you or the world in which we see. And I just know when you read the scriptures, it shows that the children of Israel was the nation that was given the laws, statutes, and commandments. And we're the ones who taught about the Most High. We taught the other nations, and now we live in a nation, in a world which the Gentile nation is teaching the children of Israel.
Damon, can you hear when Fax starts talking to you?
Really not. That's a no. That would be a no.
That's a hard no.
I hear Fax. But I mean, pretty much just what I want to just say this real quick before I hop off. Because religion and because spirituality has been so warped and skewed, all nationalities have been warped and skewed. I would say the Blacks probably the most. So that's So anyway, let me hop off. Let me let somebody else in.
Okay.
And,
thanks, Tony.
Go on.
Can you just finish what you were saying though? Because it was really important.
Can Damon hear?
Damon, can you hear?
Hello?
Can you hear?
I don't know. Damon, can you hear us?
Can you hear?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah,
Damon might be frozen. Okay, so don't worry. Right. Damon, if you come out and come back on, anyone can grab that spot and come in and have this conversation. Kinte. Okay, there we go. Kinte, can you come in and talk about what's happening on Periscope?
Who else coming on?
Because you were saying that it's popping, and I'm dying to know what people are saying over there.
Okay, I'm back, people.
Okay.
Periscope, there's a lot of people on Periscope, and they seem to be very engaged into the program. Let me see. Okay, where is the? We have about
Grab the spot if you want, Taylor. Oh, Damon.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop out so someone else can come in. I'm just listening.
Thanks, Anika. Thank you for joining
Yeah,
the room.
it was nice to see.
Conversation.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's popping on here.
Okay, go ahead, Kinte.
Okay, so where's okay, somebody wrote we are the Moors, that's our nationality. People are kind of responding to it exactly in real time what people were saying. So we have a lot of people in here, and they are look to be very excited about the conversation. So if anybody on Periscope has any more things to say, please relay it to us, and we will make sure that your voices will be heard.
Right. Welcome, Taylor. I think you're Taylor. Yeah. Taylor, you just muted himself. There
you go. Oh, yes, I did, because I was kind of quiet. What's up, everybody? Hello.
Hey.
What's cracking?
Big up.
What did you want to share with us?
Okay. What's up? It was just so much to talk about. First, I really appreciate the broadcast, and it's good to see everybody coming out and talking and such. And I really just enjoy these types of conversations. But I guess I'll say one thing, and then I'll get off, because I know probably a lot of people want to make a rotation. When it comes to the slavery thing, and I saw Ulysses' statement saying, "How can we as Black people find anything positive out of the scriptures?" I didn't go to no seminary or anything like that, but I've just been in a really intense study of the Bible for many years or whatever, and I don't expect for that to hold any weight, but just want to say that's how I came across an understanding, or the understanding that I have right now. And when it comes to the whole black, white, or nationality thing or ethnicity issue, I feel that most people don't really understand the story of the Bible. It was someone said earlier, it's not just like a list of rules, it's written in the form of a story. And one of the most uncomfortable things that's been happening for me is I'm amazed by how many people just don't really know the story, right? And it's not a problem. To me, that's ignorance, and ignorance is not problematic, right? Not right, but arrogant ignorance becomes a problem to me. It's like, if you don't know it, then okay, just kind of learn about it. But when it comes to the whole black-white issue, the story of Christ, and I was asking earlier, what is the message of Christ? The story of the Bible is really pointing to something that's like out of this world. This has nothing to do with political power or, no longer being a slave or becoming rich, right? It's like the message of Christ, the whole message of the Bible is talking about people actually living forever, right? And in the Old Testament, there was harsh treatment of people that were Gentiles, right? Or people that were not Israelites or not Jews. And I think a lot of times we want for, the Bible to be all about inclusivity or just everybody all coming together. But the harsh reality is there are two types of people in the world. Now, this is opinion, so forgive me. Take it with a grain of salt, right? There are people who love good, and there are people who love evil.
Yes.
Those two people can be in any ethnicity group. All right. Mm-hmm. There's black people who love evil. There's white, well, not black, but African American. I like that statement when a guy said, black it's no landmass. You know what I'm saying? So I get that, but just for the sake of the conversation, I'm making it quick. There's black people who are evil or who love evil. There's black people who love good. There's white people who love evil. There's white people who love good. Same for Asian, any other ethnicity that you can think of. The message of Christ is talking about people having life forever with God, right? And those two groups of people, the people who love good and the people who love evil, are ultimately separated by God and not by man. So the message of turn the other cheek is not just turn the other cheek because that's the moralistically speaking right or proper thing to do, but it's as a believer having an expectation that God is coming, or rather that divine justice is coming, that God will serve divine justice. So I'm not turning my other cheek because that's the moral thing to do. I'm turning the other cheek because I'm considering my citizenship in the kingdom of heaven, or with what God was talking about, you know. And that, I don't think it's just like what Dre said. You know, it all depends on the context. You know, if you come here to take my property or take my life and I feel threatened, I'm thinking about my children, I'm thinking about my wife, I can't promise you that I'm not going to put a hot one in you. I just can't promise that. You know, I wish that I could say that I wouldn't, because you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
no,
anyway.
he actually did. Fact spoke to that a little earlier when he was saying, you know, how are we supposed to not retaliate? And they're teaching us to turn the other cheek. I don't know if you want to just speak to that, what you were saying earlier, Facts. Just a little louder so people can hear you.
So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I look at religion as a device. Like, it's a device that can contain a moral lesson, economic structure. It's multifaceted, right? And the key thing is, what is the messaging? What is the branding, right? If I says to a people, listen, I say to myself, I need to keep these people docile. I need to keep these people calm. I need to keep these people in a non-retaliatory state. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push aspects of the doctrine, whether it's true or not. I'm going to push aspects of the doctrine that lead to that type of behavior. Then I'm going to associate that type of doctrine and those ideas. I'm going to ascribe them to a God, because as they say, once the policeman is in your head, I don't need to police you, right? So if you are in a state of, wait a second, my gifts are in the hereafter because I'm going to keep calm and I'm not going to retaliate against whether it be master, whether it be government, whatever the case may be. And keep in mind, the irony of it is that Jesus is probably one of the most revolutionary heads of a religion, because he literally goes to Jerusalem and beats the bankers while cussing out the Pharisees and the government. So by any measure, he's a revolutionary figure. But we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to not focus on that. We're just supposed to focus on the turn the other cheek, stay calm, slaves love your masters, and all this other nonsense. So, you know, that's so.
That's what Christianity teaches.
That's what that, and if you just reclassify that, that's what this device teaches. It's a control device. That's all.
Oh my God.
I've often thought about that. You know, like some sort of device, whatever. And the only thing I just feel like there is a general impression of Christianity, and then it's actually like what's going on and what it's talking about, you know. And as far as like that statement, I don't really have a rebuttal for that, you know, as saying like it's some sort of device to keep people docile, you know, so that possessions can be taken or whatnot. And the only thing I can say is, like, as I read the story, it just doesn't come across like that, you know, because it's the message of Christ. Christ is saying to a rich person, love your neighbor. He's saying to a poor person also, love your neighbor, right? He's saying to a slave, love your neighbor, right? He's also saying to a slave master, love your neighbor. And your neighbor just happens to, you know, for a slave master, a slave is a neighbor. You understand? It's not that.
The story of Jesus is, to me, the story of a political and a social revolutionary who has a very profound and unique message. And it's like you take this story and you put it in the middle of a bunch of nonsense. I don't know how to put it, but the rest of the story, like from the back end and the front end, have no connection whatsoever with this story of Jesus. But what they've done now is they've used that device, which is a great moral rubric, a great moral set of instructions, and placed it in the middle of a lot of immoral behavior. And meaning God oversees and supports and co-signs a lot of immoral behavior, right? He essentially behaves like a petulant child for 2,000 years, and all of a sudden Jesus is born, and then we have this high moral standard. But then I'm supposed to believe that this God that acts like a petulant child and Jesus are the same person, or they associate with each other. Nonsense. I don't know. I don't think I have a lot of fans in this conversation, but I'm just putting it out there. I'm just being myself.
Can I say there's no one else you can be. I just want to highlight what Ulysses was saying. Religion as a system structure is used to suppress our minds so they can control us better, and having many forms of religion is also a divisive tool.
Because now we're fighting each other instead of focused on the real fight. Because you know what the reality is? I just want to say one last thing. I may shut up after this for the rest of the day. You know what the reality is? That through all the centuries that all these things have been going on, since the beginning of the agrarian age, the vast majority of people live in a state of want, and a talented one, or a greedy, I should say, 1%, through all the age, through all these different societies, has maintained themselves in the lap of luxury and given us the promise about what happens in the hereafter. So they live in the luxury in the now and give us the promise of later. I don't buy it.
But that's, I mean, if that's, I feel like the biggest thing is for each and every person to just pay attention to your conscience. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the message of Christ comes across in that type of way, I wouldn't try to change a person's mind. You know what I mean? It's just, the only thing I can say is it's bigger than that. To say, you know, I'm going to tell you that you can have prizes in the here and after so that I can take you right now. It's so much bigger than that. Because to me, as you live life, you know, well, depending on what you go through, you'll see just how unimportant many things that we feel is extremely important just falls off in the face of death, you know, in the face of sickness. You know, that's just reality. Like, the thing that we all have to deal with is death. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but I understand that point. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to say. This is about slavery, right? This might sound weird, but some years back, I came across, I had a mechanic friend, and long story short, he called jumper cables slave cables. I don't know if y'all ever heard that before. I don't know if that was real country, but if y'all know any old mechanics, talk to a mechanic and just, you know, ask them about jumper cables. The original term, you can look it up on whatever, in dictionary, whatever. Slave cables is the term for jumper cables. And I just want to present or offer this notion of thought, right? Slavery is the relationship between the powerless and the powerful. Nice. I don't fully agree with what Tony was saying earlier, but Tony was saying some things that caught my attention. The guy who said that, you know, slavery, it was according to Hebraic law or something like that. I don't know about that. I'm not going to say that it was consensual, but I'm going to say that in the scriptures, a lot of people like to say, oh, God said that slavery was okay, right? But God actually commanded proper treatment of slaves. It wasn't the slavery that was experienced or the history of America. It wasn't that, right? But I just want to present the notion of it. Take it with a grain of salt.
It wasn't that
kind of slavery. But slavery is the relationship between the powerless and the powerful, right? Evil people are going to make that relationship the way that they make it, right? And another, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let somebody.
No, fine. Go ahead, talk.
Another thing is, when it comes to just the whole big scheme of things, right? Remember I mentioned that the two types of people. We never want to talk about the harsh reality of the fact that there is a such thing as evil. Maybe you don't want to call it evil, right? But if someone breaks into your house, you have children and your wife or whatever, or children and a husband, whatever, and that person has come to rob you, kill you, or whatever, that person is an enemy, right? And terrestrially speaking, on this earth, the only way to deal with that person is either his life or your life, right? It's either his ways or your ways. And honestly, what I see in the scripture is the understanding of man and civilization is progressing, right? Where a long time before, or let's say before, before in the Old Testament days, people were strictly associated by who their family was, where they were from, and what those people did, right? This is what the Midianites do. This is what the Amorites do, right? This is where, even in the New Testament, you still see that when he said, this man is a Cretan, and all Cretans are liars. I don't know if any Bible scholars, if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. But what Christ ushers in is saying that the difference is not what differentiates people is not just their culture or where they're from or their family, right? It's actually the Spirit of God that's impressing upon people. And there's a whole chapter, 2 chapters actually in the New Testament, Romans chapter 9, Romans chapter 11, where it's dealing with this subject that most Christians are very uncomfortable with, right? And that is, listen, just like in this world right now, you have murderers, rapists, and all types of people that you have to deal with. And we're not saying to hold hand. Anyone who has lost someone, a child, to gun violence, or had a daughter that got raped, You're not trying to sit there and hold hands and sing kumbaya with this person, especially when they show no sort of remorse or concern about what they did, right? And it's the same reaction that God has to gentilic behavior, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So I would just say, just check out Romans chapter 9. It's a scripture that said, I don't know if you saw in the comments I put, it's the potter and the clay. It's an ugly reality. The scriptures teach us that it offers the notion that God created man for his purposes, right? So a lot of people, they want to, as soon as it's good, they want to say, oh, that's from God. As soon as it's evil, they want to say, oh, that's from the devil. When the scriptures themselves teach that good and evil comes from God, right? But God is using that evil to teach a message and to make himself known, to make certain things known, if you will. And there is harsh treatment of people who do not have the Spirit of God in them by God, not by his servants, not by his people. So that's why it's like turn the other cheek, right? It's like it's this impression saying, vengeance is I'm going to get that person. That's not for you to do. You understand? That's God's saying that to people who believe in him. And a person who has accepted this message of eternal life doesn't feel that I got to save my life. It's got to be my life or your life. You get what I'm saying? So that's it. I don't want to talk too much.
Just a quick question too, because this is a question that comes up for me personally as well. I've always kind of wondered. So, and Dre brought it up. No, Ulysses brought it up. Who wrote the Bible? Like that, just that question alone, for me, was a very, very powerful question for me because.
Well, Dre is saying he didn't write the Bible, but had his scholars translate it with his input.
Okay.
But then Ulysses asked about who had control over writing.
No.
King James version.
Damon, yeah, your input, please.
Are you talking about? It was King James that authorized, and he used 70 Hebrew scholars to write the Bible because I think I would believe that because he was a servant of the Most High, that he knew that his people would be speaking English in the future as well. So that's why it was written from Hebrew to English.
325 AD,
same people are
there was a council by Constantine where he wanted to, how should I say, amalgamate all the books that were to be in the Bible. And so the books that we have now are a slightly watered down version. There's if any of you guys ever have a chance to get your hands on a book called The Lost Books of the Bible, do that because it has all the original. There's books like the Book of Thomas that many people have never heard, the Book of Barnabas, the Gospel of Judas. Like there's books that didn't make themselves that didn't find themselves in the Bible. From those translations in the Latin, we eventually arrived many years later with King James. With the King James Bible, but the Bible had existed in some form or the other, and the Torah, and the prophets, which was the Jewish Bible, which had been in existence before the Council of Nicaea, that was already there, and that was which we now call the Old Testament. That was added to what we regard as the New Testament, right? But anyways, that was all in existence long before King James, and it's just an English translation.
Well, I mean, there was the Apocrypha that was involved in the Bible. That was during the 1500s. They were using the Apocrypha. The King James original 1611 came with the Apocrypha. So that's 14 other books that you're missing from the end of the Old Testament to the beginning of the New Testament. There's 400 years of history missing. So when you talk about the King James, which one are you talking about? The 1700 where they took out the Apocrypha, or are you talking about the 1600s that come with the Apocrypha that tells you about the Greek captivity? These Bibles today, the King James Bible, you don't know anything about the Greek captivity, even though the Daniel talks about the 4 kingdoms. It goes from the Persian Mede captivity to the New Testament when the Romans were charged. Where does the Greek captivity?
Right.
Where is
Can
that?
I ask a question? I don't know if you guys have
I understand where you're talking about there's other writings that are out there that can help It doesn't mean that the
No,
King
I'm
James
not getting
Bible
into the validity of it. I'm just saying like that the structure of it had been put in place long before King James got to it. He had to have had some template in order for him to translate something or have his scholars translate. What I was going to ask actually is how many people know or have read the Dead Sea Scrolls? Highly recommended.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. Please do.
Yeah.
I won't spoil the story for you. Read it for
Absolutely.
yourself.
Well, that's a different elephant in the room that we'll address, is that we don't read as a people. Yeah. But do you want to mention what people are saying on the side?
So yes, there's a lot of great conversation going on the side. So we have Tony. So Tony said the Catholics were the ones that were behind the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent. Mm-hmm. So like that was, and then you Lisa went on to say they wanted to invade our continent, and when you invade a nation, what tactics do you use? 1, remove your religion. 2, language. 3, gods, and etc. And so those are very, very valid points. And Dre is basically saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls are very great documents, and Tony has read it before. But like, see, all these things. See, like, we're not, when it comes to books and like knowledge sharing, like as far as the man, even all of us here, it's, for me, like my experience is that everything is based on opinion. Honestly, like I could think a thought, put it into words, and write a book about it. And if it makes sense, if it basically it jives with what you're going through, you most likely would say, you know what, this guy's right. And if you repeat it often enough too, there is a chance that somewhere along the line, people are going to take my words as being factual. So I'm saying that in the aspects of spirituality, the way I've experienced my spirituality, everything is almost hearsay until you experience it. Then for me, it becomes factual for me. Now, all these what you call it, like all these books that we're making reference to, these are based on people's supposed and alleged experience that they've occurred. Either somebody heard the voice of God talking to them, and then through their scribes had these words translated. And so behind, like, to kind of touch a bit on what Ulysses is saying, there's a motive behind like every human's the agenda, like why they doing what they're doing. So for me, what was King James's motive when he basically had his scribes write out his version of the Bible, his version of God's word?
Does anybody else want to grab the spot that's there? But I didn't know if somebody was addressing that. No. Dre, did you want to take that spot and address what Mike was asking? Can you summarize that again? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. It's the fact that we all look to these books as moral compasses, and when you look at it in all reality, if they were written by a man, then is it not somebody's experience, or is it not an opinion? Go ahead, man.
But look, when you say, because I hear this all the time, and I never really get an opportunity to address it, yes. Right? But when a lot of people like to say that the Bible is the moral compass, right? And what comes along with that is look in the Bible and you'll learn how to live, right? Look in the Bible and you'll learn what's right and wrong, right? The issue I have with that is, according to the scriptures, I want to be careful how I say this, right? But according to the scriptures, it is impossible for man to learn the law of God and then follow it. The laws of God is not there to make man behave better and to make humanity great and perfect and grow and prosper. According to the scriptures, right? According to if you, like I said, check out Romans 9, Romans 11, the whole book of Romans and Hebrews talks about this. The law brings man to a point of calling out to God because he realizes his imperfections. And what's happening now is, and that's the issue that I have with religion and church. It's like the churches kind of, they have this unquestioned, unthought of, unthought out, how do you say, exterior, or that's the reputation of being the good people. That's not what it is, because the law, Paul was saying how if man pays attention to the law, they'll realize they can't uphold the law, right? So now what happens is, unholy people immediately hear that and they say, oh, well, that means you could do whatever you want to do. But Paul says, God forbid, that's not what it is. So just that whole phrase, or the thought of the Bible being a moral compass, I think that that's a bit of an overstatement. But I will say, I think that the Bible presents to you or to a person the notion of what is right and wrong. Not in a sense that, oh, learn it so that you can do right, because you can't. No one can. Right? The scriptures themselves says any man who feels that they can be saved through the law, they are under a curse. You won't, following the law of God won't, it'll make you aware of your sin, but it will not fix the problem. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the real problem is that the wages of sin is death. Again, it all comes back to death. Not being rich, not being married, not being happy, healthy, and wealthy, but actually living forever. Right. And since no one is living forever, there's the evidence where no one is perfect. That's why it's a big part of the story of Christ is not just what he taught, it's actually what happened to him. Right. Because before, I wasn't always a Christian or a believer. And I just had issue with the resurrection. It's like no one talks about the resurrection. They talk about the teachings. They talk about all these things. But the story of Christ is saying that this man did no wrong. And because he did no wrong, he came back to life after death. Because you understand that it's so much more to the story that, you know, these blanket terms. So I just wanted to address the moral compass. So go ahead.
Dre, do you have any input to that?
Well, I mean, as far as what Taylor was
saying,
saying,
I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, if I could probably add to that, I think he brings in good points, and then there's a question of is he who he said he was, right? And so when I read the book of Acts, I read the book of Acts like it's a historical document, continue from the book of Luke, right? And I mentioned this before about how in the very beginning, even the talk of Jesus was outlawed and punishable by death, right? So I came to think to myself, either this is the greatest hoax in all the world, the greatest scam, or it's the truth. So let me explain, because some people are going to say, here he is trying to get people saved. I'm not. This is just for me. Listen carefully. The report is that Jesus died, he rose again, he resurrected, he's no longer here. The also report is that there was witnesses to that. Okay. And when I have conversations with people about this, I ask this question: if you were on driving somewhere and you got into a car with a friend, the friend said, pull over by this bank. When he gets out the car, you see him put on a mask, takes out a gun, go in the bank, rob the bank, come outside and say, listen, here's some money. Don't ever tell nobody. Okay. They flash your picture on a camera on the street and they find you and you get arrested. Okay. You know, you're about to go to jail. Will you snitch? You're about to go to jail for the rest of your life. You love your life. You know what happened, or you know the truth, right? What are you going to do? Most people in their right mind will say, listen, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know this person did it. Let's take a look at the situation with Jesus and his disciples, right? His disciples were witnesses to what Jesus did and what he said. Now, either Jesus never did those things or he did. When confronted, 11 out of the 12 disciples that witnessed what Jesus said, what was said about Jesus and what was done by Jesus, they witnessed it. And each one of them, those that were in a circle, all died going to their death, saying that what happened was true. Now, in my thinking, I'm like, okay, there had to be, if it wasn't true, at least one of them would have said, listen, I love my life. I got a wife, got a kid, all that stuff. Jesus was lying. Don't kill me. It was all a hoax. It was a get rich scheme that we failed. We tried to get rich out of it. We wanted to manipulate people. We didn't know that you guys were going to chase us and try to kill us because of this. Like, we had no idea. But it's a lie. Please don't kill me. That didn't happen. In fact, all of them. In fact, the one that didn't die was exiled. So, and even after that, from that point of Jesus recorded resurrection until it became the official religion in Rome, Christians were running for their lives, dying for the faith. So I had to reason that historical event and say, well, either these men were crazy for lying and dying for the lie, or it was the truth. So that was just sort of like a continuation of what Taylor was saying. The books in the Bible, now just a little bit of history, and this is based on what I learned in my studies, and this is up for debate. I would appreciate the conversation because I may learn something. The reason why the books were canonized is because of the overall theme and the trajectory of the books of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. So it wasn't just historical documents. There were connections made from each book that the scholars came and said, okay, we read this text. It seems to connect with this text. So let's put it together. And that's how ultimately became the canon. There were other, but the truth is there are other texts that were not included that should not be disregarded as if it's irrelevant. It is relevant, and it's good to read. It's good for learning. It's good for referencing. But when it comes to the canonized Bible and how we see it today, when the books were written, they were written by multiple authors over thousands of years. And it came together the way it is now because people got together. They said that these books follow the overall theme. And you're right, it may have been a motive there. The motive was probably we want to connect people with God. These books seem to do that. So let's include all these books in the Bible. Let's make this the religious document and let's spread it around the world saying that this is the Bible. But yeah.
Okay.
But the theme of the Bible
I was
is about a
referencing
people.
from I'm sorry, let me actually
It's
clarify
about
that.
a people. And this people have
I think
revelation.
I think your connection is bad because we're not able to hear you very well. You can try again. Yeah, I was, but go ahead. We can hear you right now.
Are you talking to me? No, I was just saying the Bible. I mean, you can look at all like when you look at Psalms 83, and it talks about all these nations are coming into one accord to try to destroy the children of Israel. And the fact that every kingdom that was on earth also enslaved the children of Israel. You would assume that if God chose a people and then they go into slavery in every kingdom, that you would assume that these other nations know who the children of Israel are as well. And they would have their records. And they would manipulate those records, whoever was in power during that time, or even share the doctrine that will make that nation looks really good. But the theme of it, what the prophets and what the Christ and the disciples look like is true. So, like I said, all these different religions have their own doctrine, and the Bible has its own doctrine. And so both doctrines can't be true. If we're talking about Christianity and the Bible goes against a lot of what Christianity and things we're taught to believe in. So that's why it's important for us just to read the scriptures. We just have to read the scriptures and not take on the Christianity doctrine due to the fact that it was given to us now in slavery as well. Because you have to believe that Christianity
David,
also
what do you
came with
mean
an image.
exactly
So
by
if
the two
the
different
image is
doctrines?
false,
If you can just clarify
what else
that
have they
for
taught
the
us
listeners.
that is false?
You said scripture and Bible.
So then,
I mean, scripture and Bible I'm
the
saying that
books
they are
from,
the same. But I'm saying Christianity
Matthew to Revelation
has its own doctrine.
You're saying that's watch.
No, I'm talking about during the time when the Romans were in power and they were over in Rome, and Constantine intertwined Christianity with paganism. So when you look at Christianity doctrine, look at all the celebrations that we take heed to, and then the Bible tells you in Leviticus 23, he gave you holy days. to take heed to. We celebrate Easter, Christmas, and all these pagan holidays that the Bible doesn't even speak of. If anything, the Bible tells you not to partake in those days. So that's why I say the Bible has its own doctrine, and Christianity has its own doctrine. But in John 7:38, it says, "He that believeth in me, as the scriptures have said, out of his belly will flow rivers of living water." So,
okay, we just want to bring facts in to just
I'm
make
gonna
a
believe
point
what
to what you're saying,
Christ,
Damon.
not
He
what
wants to speak
Christianity
to that.
I just want to. It's just more of a comment. I appreciate you putting out there the business of the connection between pagan holidays and pagan traditions and let's say biblical precepts or beliefs. And one of the things that I love, that I get amused about, is in the Bible, Jesus asked for some very specific things for his followers to do. Yet I've gone to church after church after church, and I don't see nobody washing nobody's feet. But they're quite ready to talk about Christmas and this, that, and the third. But the washing of feet, I never see that done. Why? Because you don't want to look at your sister so-and-so's bunion and corn. Okay, fine. But keep it straight.
Yeah. It was, I think.
I just also want to acknowledge people.
But it's really about humbling. It's really about humbling
made
yourself.
some comments. Go ahead.
Washing the feet is about
Okay,
humbling
so we
yourself.
have Ulysses that wrote, "As African, we gave the world the God concept, and as African, we give the world God concept. The spirituality is an experience. It's your personal experience, not a community experience, if you understand what I'm trying to say."
And Rad?
And then Rad said, "Faith is a personal thing and have lots of similarities. There are other cultures in the world, especially in the Far East, who have spiritual traditions and religions that have nothing to do with the Bible." And then Kenty said we have 25 minutes. And then Ulysses says, the people that know that it's a lie have the control to suppress the truth. Roman Catholic, you won't find out. Most people won't never find out. I'm sorry. It says you won't find out what most people never find out. The lie sounds much better. So yeah, it's like I mean, like
Absolutely.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
We believe in the lie more
and
than
I mean,
we believe
one
in
of
the truth. The truth sounds foreign to us.
One question that I want to ask as well, because like in acknowledgement of all walks of beliefs, like really, then I mean, who is God? What is God? Like, if I'm basically like what is God? Who is God?
That's a big question to address with 10 minutes left of this whole thing. But it's clear we're going to have to do this more than once, but we can try and tease it out a little bit till the end of the podcast because it's an important question, as Taylor also has asked.
Can I throw a question out for everybody? Because
first off, I don't think it's fair that we can't even see you, bro.
I know, right?
You know what I mean? The camera ain't big enough. Don't worry about it. But here's the thing. L.A. has thrown this, has woven this through the conversation a couple of times. This whole business of the connection between our spirituality and our Africanness, and how it influences our identity. Is it beneficial? Is it detrimental, and so on? And I think the biggest thing that I think of when I think of religion, and we didn't even talk about Islam, but that's one that needs to be discussed. But one of the things that I think of is that I had this conversation actually with a Nigerian girl the other night. She said that in Nigeria, she never, the whole notion of blackness is irrelevant. She's from her culture, her ethnicity, her group, her family's from a particular area. They have a certain experience. She said it was only when she came to North America that this whole idea of Africanness as in some sort of a derogatory term or meaning, and then blackness specifically was ascribed to her. So here's the question I have. Are these religions feeding our unity as a people amongst each other in a meaningful way? I see that regardless, let's take religion completely out of the discussion. There is a power struggle. Right now, what I'm looking at is with clear eyes, I'm looking at China recolonizing the continent. I'm looking at Europe continuing to manipulate and steal from the continent. I'm looking at an emerging black middle class on the or African, I should say, middle class on the continent, and a desire for connection between Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. I'm looking at the wealthiest continent on the planet with more arable land and natural resources and wealth in the ground to the tune of almost, from what I understand, $14 trillion conservative estimate. That's the entire, that's raw, that would be the raw material cost. So we're talking upwards of multiples of that, hundreds of trillions of dollars of real wealth in the land. And religions that are either pulling us together to take advantage of what our material and human capital, right? Our inheritance, or they're dividing us. So the question that we have to sort of ponder, I think, is what's the utility of this device we've been given? Is it helping us to pull together, to take advantage, or be taken advantage of?
Wow.
It depends on what tool you're talking about. There's a lot of tools that destroyed us.
No, I recognize that, but I'm saying this again. This is
we're done. We're done. All right.
Drop it.
You just dropped the mic. It's over. It's been real, guys.
We have
That's a whole new show. All the tools that destroyed it.
Anika, truer words have never been spoken.
Facts.
She said, "We have multi-millionaire black churches, but where are our banks?"
Facts.
Rad saying, "Who is God?" Dang, laugh out loud. God is whatever spirit and energy moves you, and the force gives you comfort, peace, and strength. Where's our hospitals? Kinte saying, and this is kind of where these conversations are supposed to move us towards, because while we can talk about these things and justify history in all kinds of different ways, we need to come up with how are we going to get to where we need to get to, and what are the solutions that we can put in place to get there. And if we have these divisions, we're less likely to get to where we need to get to as a people. So unfortunately, it is 4:47, and we have maybe about 12 minutes left in the room.
That's why the Most High says the law is pure, the law is spiritual, the law is true. We got to come back to the law.
Okay.
That's all.
Come back to the law.
Come back to the law.
Not the practical side of that.
Yeah, we're going to take up these questions and more in a live to air from University of Toronto on March the 1st. We're going to have our first town hall, and you'll be able to sign in here and watch and take part in the conversation. We'll probably end up have to have an after room because people clearly have so much more to say. Thank you, Dre. And I just want to say thank you to everybody in the room. Kinte, I know if you could just shout out the people on Periscope who I'm sure have had a lot to say, but we haven't been able to see what they're saying. And there's a lot of people talking.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set it up where you can, in my square, at least you'll be able to see their comments real time, because a lot of times they're reacting to what's being said in the moment. So to kind of go back, sometimes it'll.
It takes away from it, I feel.
Right. But currently we have 9 people on. And they seem to be very into the conversation. Unfortunately, I accidentally hit refresh and I lost what they were saying. But I see Lewis too just popped in too. But I have to say this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed just listening to it. Sometimes it's good just to listen to it, and we don't have these conversations often enough. And so kudos to everybody that participated. And
no one got cussed out.
And that's so cool, because this is your religious beliefs are very sacred to you, right? And so that's why sometimes you can't have the conversation, because it cuts so deep to the core of who you are that you don't always have there's no room for actually thoughtful conversation sometimes. And I really felt like this conversation was really good. And we got to talk about a lot of different things from different aspects. So I really appreciate that. And people were really into this. We have to do this again.
We will have to do this again, and we will. I just want to give our handle so that you can follow us on our social media. We have an Instagram site for the Elephant Room. It's called @TheElephantRoomTV. My personal Twitter is @L.A Wade 6. And on Instagram, my personal is @ThisIsLA Wade. And Mike?
Mine is @Mike Mike_truth. So that's Mike spelled MIC_RUTH. And we're just gonna put that into the comment section. And yeah, guys, like, let's keep the conversation going, like because that's the whole point of the Elephant Room, to talk about these unspoken topics and taboo things and make all of us together, so we can further, bridge the gaps that's occurring in our communities.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to give a shout out to their own handles?
And I got to call you guys out. You guys are like drug dealers. You're gonna start these conversations and then you're gonna go away.
So, we're not going anywhere.
So, yeah, we gotta call out the Elephant Room a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, but did anyone else want to share their handle and we could all, follow each other and support one another in what we're doing? This is essentially a Black business, so feel free to share that this is something that we're doing, and I think it's an important conversation that we have, not just this conversation, but a lot of the conversations we have in the room. So go ahead, Dre, you can add.
My handle is Damon Allen 9 on Instagram and Twitter.
There we go. It's in the comments.
Damon Allen 9, all one word.
Dre?
Allen 9, and mine is Andre D Harrison on Twitter, Andre_D_Harrison on Instagram, and on YouTube just search Harrison Family Vlogs.
Harrison Family Vlogs.
Oh, that's interesting.
That sounds interesting. Yeah. What's that about?
Just me and my kids living life from a perspective of a single father.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. And Kinte?
Yes, you can follow me at Kinte F. That's KINTEF on Twitter. And you can also get me at Kinte Ferguson on Instagram. That's KINTEFERGERSON. And of course, the website is indyradio.org. That's INDYradio.org. And we're not going to be on tomorrow night for Mars Venus. We will be on Tuesday night doing our next program. So, So Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. But our regular nights are Monday nights.
Nice.
What's up, Louis?
Okay.
Louis.
So we're going to stop the broadcast. It doesn't mean you get kicked out of the room, but we're going to stop the broadcast now, and feel free to be a part of the after room or after party here. Hervey, what's up? It was great. It was really great. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning into the Elephant Room. We'll see you Friday, March the 1st.
Yes. Boom.